Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. The big movie coming to the theaters this past weekend, of course, was If. I really enjoyed it. I know critics are not loving it as much as I did, but if you happen to see it and really dug it, or you were excited for it, and you want like some positive, fun conversations, even if there's some emotionally deep things in there, well, you can see that review right up there. But there was another movie that came out this week that I personally was very excited about. I think the concept on paper would have worried me because the original movie is an all-timer in the world of suspense thrillers or home invasion movies. Hell, for home invasion movies, like, this is the bar. Like, it's as good as it gets, in my opinion. So the idea of redoing it, I was hesitant about. However, after being at New York Comic Con, where director Renny Harlin was there, talking about the movie and talking about how it was an original take that pays correct homage to the original and doesn't detract from the iconic moments or iconic things in that film, like the masks, which are recreated fairly identically here. But it would be a reimagining of that story. That I thought was interesting. And the fact that the script was so big and the idea was so interesting, the studio greenlit filming 3 movies back to back to back. Like, the script was so big, they just said, let's chop it up into 3 chapters. And listening to them at con, I understand why it was greenlit. After watching it, the question is, do I still understand why it was greenlit? What are we talking about? Why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat? We are getting ready to dive in, spoiler free, maybe a little spoilery because, like, remake, into The Strangers, Chapter 1. And yeah, on paper, the idea of remaking The Strangers just seems stupid. If you wanted to create a sequel like they did, or an original take on that story, sure, I think there could be value in that because there are lots of elements in The Strangers where if you were to put it into a different scenario or a slightly different story, you could still work because, like, there are things built into that movie that just inherently are going to work, like the masks. So the idea of a reimagining of that instead of a direct remake is what sold me on the movie. Like, listening to them talk about this made me go, this isn't gonna be The Strangers, but the things that are iconic are gonna be handled correctly because real fans of The Strangers are making these movies. Now that I've seen the movie, I think it's a problem that real fans were the ones making this movie. And I think what they were talking about both at New York Comic Con and where I've heard, things discussed in other interviews and at other panels, I think what they were talking about in the reimagining and the originality and something that was different, I think that's what, like, the full perspective of seeing all 3 films, having the full script in front of you, doing all, like, I could see making these 3 movies back to back to back. Well, the last 2/3, chapters 2 and chapter 3, they would inherently be different because at the end of chapter 1, you've reached the end of The Strangers, the movie. So yeah, the next 2 chapters would have to be something different. And maybe in being so ingrained more so in that than just that first chapter, maybe that was the vibe. But I am here to tell you, chapter 1 is a straight remake of The Strangers, and that's a problem because The Strangers, like I said, for myself and for many people, is the bar. And it's not easy to reach the bar with original features. You think you're going to reach the bar remaking one of the greatest home invasion movies of all time? No, that's just not going to happen. And look, I don't want to absolutely destroy Alan R. Cohen or Alan Friedland, who are the writers here. I don't want to destroy Renny Harlin. Hell, I made sure I ran out that panel as fast as I could to get this print, which is a dope freaking poster, because no matter how you cut it, the Strangers masks are brilliant. That like Renny has signed, and I think it was Friedland, but maybe it was Cohen. Maybe they were both there. I think only one of them was there, but one of the 2 writers is the other autograph on there. That got me all pumped, man. And there are things in here that aren't terrible, right? Like, the movie has moments. Like, Harlan is a decent director. I love Deep Blue Sea. And he does do some things in this movie that work. Like there's some nice camera. Like there's a couple just like put the camera down, set everything up in front of it in an interesting way, and all of a sudden it creates like a lens for you to look through where someone can walk in or walk out of frame. Or you go to the same shot a bunch of times so that the thing that you saw in the trailer, you think it's playing in a way where like when it's happening it's gonna like you go to the same spot so many times you can cut it up in the trailer to make it seem like it's one thing, and in the movie it ends up playing differently. Creates oh cool, the moment's not gonna come where I thought the moment was gonna come, and can lull you because oh man, every time they go to the door you're expecting the thing but the thing doesn't come, and then oh the thing comes and that's the thing that's gonna scare you. There are things in there that hit at times. One of the things that Harlan actually talked about that I was excited for was like the idea of like a lot of these types of movies that have pop scares in them or jump scares, they'll rely on the scoring to get the jump or to create the pop. Those strings going real high, no matter what you do, are going to make your body do something. And then when you match that with visual, jump scares are really effective. And Harlan said that was something that they didn't want to do. They didn't want to just force you to jump. They wanted the things on screen to scare you. And there are times where the score drops out, you get nat sound, and a couple of those pops work. But as I was sitting in the theater, I was glad that I didn't watch the original Strangers first. It's one of those where it's been years since I've actually gone back and rewatched the movie. But the one thing that movie imprints on you from day one is the feeling. I've never had my anxiety kick in the way it kicked in the first time I watched The Strangers. That movie is anxiety inducing. The jump scares are good and they're natural. Everything is just pulled super tight. And like, you know how that movie made you feel, even if you can't remember every single scene or every single beat of the movie because it's been a while. So I go into this, I was gonna watch it. I said, you know what? No, because you're not gonna like it if you end up doing it. So I waited to do it after. So in the theater, like I said, there were stretches that worked. But as I was sitting there, I was like, this is like beat for beat The Strangers at times. And having a direct remake, you're never going to reach the levels that the original got to. And then after I saw it, and about a day later, I was down at my brother's, dog sitting or pup sitting, and Olive B is like 3 months old, I think. She's a little cutie, so it was over there, and while we were chilling, I was like, let's throw the original Strangers on, give it a watch. And then after I watched it, the way I feel about chapter 1 was amplified, because there are so many things that are redirectly made, and they're just not done or executed as well as the original movie, both from the script and what's going on behind the camera. There are things where it's like, Renny said, we're fans. We don't want to do anything that takes away or detracts from what the first movie did great. So they recreated multiple things. Some of them are slightly tweaked. We'll just say, if you've never seen The Strangers, Glenn Howerton is in it. And if you have seen, there's something that happens to Glenn Howerton. Well, that character doesn't exist in this movie. That's a change. But there's a way where you're able to get the same thing. And every time they did something like that, I wasn't sitting there going, oh, that was dope. I was going, oh, well, that definitely worked better in the original movie. And like I said, after watching the original again and seeing how much of a direct remake it is, it puts you in a situation that I didn't want to be in with this movie. And a situation that, based on what I had heard from Harlan himself at Con, I didn't think I was going to be in. Where you are comparing the two movies. And if you start comparing the original Strangers to a remake of that movie, that remake is going to look worse. And that is the case here tenfold for myself. Now, that being said, like I said, Harlan does have some nice moments. There are a couple things in the script, execution-wise, that work. But my problems are filling in the blanks. There are things that are left out intentionally in the original Strangers because the vibe it creates works a lot more without knowing the facts. This movie, at times, tries to directly fill in those blanks or vaguely fill in those blanks, where it's like, knew we were in a little bit of trouble when the movie started, because unlike the original Strangers, where you're coming from like a wedding type event, going back to a friend's place where they said you could stay, that's remote, but like not away from civilization. to a house that is completely in the middle of nowhere in the woods. And the reason you get to that house is because your car breaks down. You end up stopping in this you stop in this town to get some food, and then your car is suspiciously not working afterwards. And everything in the town, I like because it was overly filling in the blanks to the point where, like, I think the scariest thing about the original Strangers is you don't know who those three people are. You have absolutely no clue. I love that they take their masks off at the end so the people, our main two characters know who those people are, and maybe in their story they're able to recognize them. But the thing that works the best as an audience member is you have no clue where these people came from, what's going on. All you know is the only answer to the why are you doing this? Because you were home. That's terrifying. And this movie, in the opening, doesn't necessarily tell you that, like, these characters are going to be the strangers, but it certainly alludes to it in ways where now you're just thinking about that. And that's something that distracts immediately away from the home invasion element of the story. And all of that stuff. Like, the only thing in the town that I dug, Richard Brake was in there. Doesn't say nothing. He's just sitting there as a sheriff having a sandwich at the diner. But I was like, ooh, Richard Brake's gonna be in this movie. Mild spoiler, but I don't want y'all to be as disappointed as I was. We never see Richard Brake after that. I'm pretty sure Brake will be in chapters 2 and 3 in some capacity, being a sheriff. And the fact that we have 2 more chapters, somebody survives. So they're going to have to ask questions. So Brake will come in at some point, but there's no Brake in this movie. I think Brake being in this movie might have helped it a little bit. But it's just stuff like that, like where you're trying to fill in the gaps and it doesn't work. And then the execution on the things that are like directly remakes, they don't hit on the level. Score is good. I thought the score was fairly strong the whole movie, and I did like, as I said, how they dropped the score out at times to allow natural sound and natural sound design be the thing that helps get you scared. But just the movie is just too similar to the first one. Now, we also have some actors in this movie, and we'll start with Ryan Bown, who plays Jeff Morrell. And we'll start with him simply because I've been talking about the things that don't work in this movie, and he is one of them. I think one of the things that makes the original Strangers so good is the fact that your main 2 characters coming out of this wedding, they're button heads. Like, they're possibly at the end of the relationship. And that makes it intriguing because it doesn't feel like anyone did anything to anybody where you would be like, I hate you. There's still love there, but the relationship doesn't work. So when you're thrown into the situation they get thrown into, it's natural for them to come back together. And as an audience member, I become invested in that. Here, it's super lovey-dovey. Like, cheeseball, corny as hell lovey-dovey. Like, they are so about each other. It's like early love, not late in life love. That's fine. But it doesn't drive you as an audience member to being invested in these 2 people because everything is working. So now you just got 2 people who their life is hunky-dory, way better than the town that they're in, and now bad stuff is happening to them. The other thing with Bound's performance and the way that he's shot, right? I'm always a big fan of, like, close-ups and how that can create intimate moments or intimate areas where you can connect with a character. And every time we're doing stuff like that with Bound, I genuinely thought he was going to turn on Madelaine Petsch at some point in the movie. Like, you don't trust him at all. Like, everything he's doing in the movie, and I don't know if it's the way they create, like, how they put the character together for this movie, or just how his but I didn't trust him at all the whole movie, and that just made me not like him, which made me less invested when he was on screen, and that's a problem. Then, of course, you do have your strangers themselves, and they work from a character design because they're essentially the same as they were in the original movie. And like I said, there are moments, but for the most part, they also aren't dialing up the terror or things that are happening in the movie. Which brings us to Madelaine Petsch herself. She is brilliant in this film. The reason that I stayed invested, the reason I had any suspense, any pull to the edge of my seat at all in this movie, Madelaine Petsch. She's fantastic. Like, she has final girl DNA all over her. And that is huge, because if you're going to have her carry the next 2 chapters, you need that vibe. However, she is just in a movie that's not very good. And the one thing that I love about Petsch in the movie is she doesn't have Final Girl vibes early, right? It's one of those things where, like, there are elements of her character that kind of remind me of Laurie Strode and Jamie Lee Curtis, where when we first meet Laurie, she's not the badass that Laurie becomes. And Maya is very similar in that sense. Maya is terrified, like, to a point of, like, almost being frozen. She's so scared at times. And one thing that I really did dig is that throughout the course of the movie, she starts to get more and more confident. And the more and more confident she gets, the stronger she gets, the smarter she gets. Where you go as an audience member, oh man, when we get to chapters 2 and 3, she could be doing some serious Final Girl work, and like some serious badass Final Girl work. And that has me intrigued and like a little excited about the idea of a chapter 2 and chapter 3. This movie, I don't think hits the mark as a remake, because it does not execute anywhere near the level of the original. However, Madelaine Petsch is so good in this movie. She's the thing that you're able to invest in. She's the thing that gets you through the movie. And she's the thing that has me intrigued for the next 2. And when I was at Con, the one thing that everybody was glowing about the whole time they were on stage was Madelaine Petsch's performance. How good she is. And I genuinely think that's true with her. And her character, Maya, is one that I can be invested in. However, I don't know if the rest of the world is going to feel that way, because this movie, I just think, misses the mark big time. And a lot of that has to do with being sold as a reimagining, which could be true for the entire story in total. But as far as chapter 1 goes, it's a straight remake. And I said at the beginning of this review, on paper, the idea of a straight remake is a bad idea. Thus, not a very good movie. And I don't think you're going to have fans that are interested in seeing more unless you can deliver a trailer that really highlights how good Petsch is going to be in chapter 2 and delivers the story in a way where you're like, oh, okay, I'm interested to see where this goes now. It's actually kind of funny. I was listening to Perry Nemiroff on one of her Merry Hour podcasts, and someone in the comments section kind of threw this idea out, and Perry kind of loved it. And as soon as I heard it, I kind of loved it, especially after seeing the movie. It would have been more interesting to do this movie in reverse. Give me chapter 3 first, chapter 2, and then lead into chapter 1 where the audience goes, oh shit, it's the strangers. That could have been interesting. But starting with chapter 1 and chapter 1 just being the strangers, just not nearly as good or as effective, I don't know, man. This one's going to have an uphill battle for the next 2 chapters, and I wonder if the studio's sitting there going, maybe we made a mistake. Or maybe they know that the next 2 chapters are going to hit, but, like, chapter 2 has to be so good. Like, word of mouth has to be so positive and so strong. That's the only way I can see people go into it, and I don't know if it's going to be that. I hope that that's the case, but this does not have me enthused for that. So let's get the C Maniacs up and give it a score. Like I said, I think what we get from writers Alan R. Cohen and Alan Friedland is not great. They have moments, and those moments don't necessarily give me a lot of hope, but it's like maybe chapter 2 could just be better than chapter 1, and that's a good first step, I guess. Same with Harlin. I think Harlin does create some moments that really work, and there is some nice camera work. Like I said, some of the camera shots in the movie, I was just like, ooh, that's a good shot. Like I had several times where I was like, ooh, that's a good shot. So there are some good technical things in there, but again, I think this concept just kind of falls apart when this is not a reimagining and is a remake, and the things that are remade aren't executed as strongly. And the other thing that I didn't like is that they start to fill in some of the blanks that create a lot of the suspense and terror in the first one, and that detracts from it here. Performance-wise, Ryan Bown just wasn't working for me, and I didn't like the fact that these 2 as a couple were so good together. Like, they're in the best place ever. I kind of wanted them to be button heads. You know, at least that makes it interesting where it's like, it can pull me in a little bit. And Bown's performance just makes you think he's going to turn on Maya at some point, and he just never clicked. Scoring is okay. Pacing's not bad. I mean, it's only 90 minutes, and you know me, I don't really technically ever get mad at a 90-minute movie. And it is a movie that you can get through. But a lot of that depends on Madelaine Petsch. Like, if she hits for you, you'll be able to get to the end of this movie. You'll walk out going, but Madelaine Petsch. And if she doesn't work for you, then yeah, you're probably going to walk out of the theater. But I think she's very strong in this. I think she has great final girl potential. And she is the reason that I'll watch Chapter 2. Also, I want this autographed poster because it's such a cool print to mean something. I mean, the Chapter 1 element of that poster is not going to mean anything. But like if Chapter 2 and 3 end up being baller, now all of a sudden we look back at this differently. But it is off to a very, very bad start. And because of that, I'm going 1.5 out of 5 C Maniacs. I know that's low! But this movie did something I didn't expect it to, and it was something I didn't want to do, and that's compare it directly to the original. And when you do that, this movie doesn't stand a chance. And the 1.5, it's pretty much all on Madelaine Petsch. The full 1 is all on Madelaine Petsch. The half point I'll give you to the couple things that did work in the movie from a creative standpoint. But yeah, you know, I mean, you're gonna have moments that you know work from a suspense home invasion thriller perspective. You're gonna have some jump moments that are okay, but I think more often than not, you're gonna have what happened in my theater, which is people giggling. Young people in particular, I think they're gonna shred this movie. The young people in my audience did not like any piece of this movie. And that also didn't help because it was a little noisy in my audience. And just as always, PSA, shut the hell up when you're in the movie theater. Put your phone away. People who go to the movies all the time hate that shit. The idea is being pulled in completely into a film. And when you talk, when you take out your phone, it takes you out the movie. And when the movie is taking you out on top of that, is not a good situation. So I do have like the slightest bit of hope for Chapter 2 because Petsch is so good, but Chapter 1 just wasn't it. So 1.5 out of 5 for the C-Man. The question is, what about you guys? Where does The Strangers, the original, fall for you in home invasion, suspense thriller movies? How high on your bar is it? And then if you've seen Chapter 1, how disappointed were you? Why did you go see it in the first place, right? Like I said, for me, listening to Renny talk about a reimagining that pays homage and respects the original, I thought that was interesting. A straight remake never would have sold me on that. So did you feel the same way? Do you think there's any chance that Chapter 2 could be better? And if you haven't seen it, are you at this point, are you going to? Do you care? Or are you just going to go home, pop in the original? If you haven't seen it, and you're not a hardcore horror fan, and you don't care that much, that's what I would do. Go home, pop the original on. You'll be very, very happy. But yeah, anything you guys got, man. Good, bad, indifferent on The Strangers, Chapter 1. Put it down below in the comment section. Look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, want to come hang out with the C-Man anytime we're talking movies, TV, trailer, reactions. This week is Furiosa. You want to be here to finally see my thoughts on a movie I've been waiting all year for? You want to show a little love and support to the old C-Man? Well, hey, come join C-Maniac Nation. All those things happen there, and all you got to do is jump over there, hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell where you get those alerts. And until next time, for the C-Man's Cinema, sit down. I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace. Hey, what's up, C-Maniac Nation? Winter Ken here, where we grow out our roots and our beard, letting you know that you can see some new C-Man videos right up here and right down here. And if you want all those videos and show that man a little love and support, come join C-Maniac Nation right over there, and the C-Man will catch you on the next one.